Hey everybody, and welcome down to Old Allen's and a much closer to being finished shepherd's hut. I'll run you through that in a separate video, the latest update, but this one is just a quick video that maybe if people are sort of like struggling a bit with things to do currently, a couple of good books to take a look at if you fancy getting an online delivery. Firstly, this one here is particularly pertinent or relevant right now. It's by a chap called Boyle, and it's called The Way Home: Tales from a Life Without Technology. Now, about 10 years ago I first encountered one of his books, and he was at the time being referred to as the moneyless man, because he set up an experiment for himself whereby he wanted to live without money for a year and see how that worked for him. In the end, he ended up doing 3.5 years, I think. So obviously it went pretty well. And in this one, he looks at a simpler life and how that sort of like, you know, ties in with the modern world, which we're all questioning at the moment, particularly with the current situation we're all in. And the interesting thing is, I read this about 2 months ago. It came out last year, 2019, and I was thinking, as this coronavirus thing was going on in China, I was thinking, oh, this chap, the way his life is set up, apart from with the social distancing we now have, apart from his human relationship side of things, it won't matter to him at all. His life is totally secure in the way that he's living it. So I can highly recommend that. Let's give you a quick, let's see if I can give you a quick read to give you a taste of whether or not you'll like it. Right. Almost a decade before I decided to unplug myself from industrial civilization, I began living without money for what was originally intended to be a one-year experiment. It ended up lasting 3 years, and money has played a minor role in my life since. At this point, you're probably thinking that here is someone with acute masochistic tendencies. I could hardly blame you. Strangely, the opposite is closer to the truth. Phrases like giving up, living without, and quitting are always in danger of sounding sacrificial, limiting, and austere, drawing attention to the loss instead of what might be gained. Alcoholics are more likely to be described as giving up the booze than gaining good health and relationships. In my experience, loss and gain are an ongoing part of all of our lives. Choices, whether we know it or not, are always being made. Throughout most of my life, for reasons that made perfect sense, I chose money and machines, unconsciously choosing to live without the things they replaced. The question concerning each of us then, one we all too seldom ask ourselves, is what are we prepared to lose, and what do we want to gain, as we fumble our way through our short, precious lives. So that gives you a very brief idea of his writing style, but that's the book. I suggest it's a good read, especially at the moment. The next book. Now this one is written by an American who's quite extreme in some of his beliefs on the way our planet, the way we should be interacting with our planet and how we should be living. I was expecting to have to translate this from American into English. I know that sounds crazy, but there are differences and nuances. But fortunately he co-wrote it with a Canadian, and Canadians are a lot closer. They sort of like bridge the gap between Americans and us Brits. So this is a self-published book. I think you need to go to permies.com to get it, but that's the title of the book. And yeah, as it says, building a better world in your backyard instead of being angry at the bad guys. And the idea of this book is after you've read it, write your name in it and pass it on to someone else. Now, I think I'm more likely to buy another copy and send that to someone because I'd like to keep this one. Let's just very quickly run you through topics to give you an idea. Environmentalist, so the problems. Environmentalist versus environmentalist. The wicked lies about light bulbs. General strategies for dealing with things within the walls of your home. More people living under one roof without stabbing each other. There you go. There's a good one for the time being. Toxic gig versus 20 years of your life. So yeah, you plenty to get your teeth into in that one. So there's another one. And currently, or just recently, one of my subscribers, I left a comment on his channel and suggested something he do with a particular plant in his garden. And he said, well, how about showing us, what you've got, old Allen's as wild edibles? And I could do that, but that would be exactly the same sort of video that people will have seen a million times over from many people. My knowledge is very basic, and one thing I would be very, very mindful of, or I always am and I suggest other people are on YouTube, is be aware of where your advice is coming from, who you're taking it from, because there's lots of people like me that know a bit, but I don't know enough to tell other people. I'm quite happy to munch on things myself that I know, but I'm not going to impart that knowledge because I don't feel I have enough knowledge. But this chap here, who wrote this book, has a YouTube channel, so I will give you a link to him. That's a very handy book. And this chap here, Miles Irving, he actually has a podcast which is called the Worldwild podcast. So it's Worldwild, not worldwide. So go to wherever you get your podcast from and maybe check that out. But again, these guys really know what they're doing. I mean, they're what we would call professional foragers. So I would always take advice from somebody who is a published author on the subject, and a recently published author as well, because there's a lot of information that changes things we thought were perfectly fine to eat 50 years ago. Turns out if you eat a lot of them, they're still going to mess you up. So these books are both recent and well worth checking out. So Wild Food UK, there's a website there, so that'd be worth a look. And as I say, Miles Irving. Now if you put Miles Irving into YouTube, you will bring up a whole load of videos of him. He does have a YouTube channel, but he doesn't use it very much, so your best source of sort of getting in touch with him and stuff is basically buy the book and listen to the podcast. But I'll put links up where I can find them at the bottom of this. So there's a bit of reading. So thank you very much, and stay safe, and I'll see you in about 18 months, 2 years maybe, when this is all over.